I won't continue with that because it doesn't actually have the English there for you. So let's get back to the apology. But what I was going to mention is every one of the dialogues is named for the particular subject of the dialogue. In this one, it's the apology. Where does Apollo come from? Did you notice? Yeah.
This, didn't it?
It could be it could refer to Apollo as the sun. It's also the snake god. I don't know, it's kind of confusing. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But in this particular dialogue, Apollo comes in because the divine that he's hearing, Socrates, is blaming it on what Apollo says to him personally, right? And Apollo speaks to him not so much to tell him what to do, but don't do that. It's kind of like his conscience. He interprets that conscience as Apollo, the god of reason. So if you think of it, APO means of or from, and logos, reason, logic, right, is, it's from reason. So it's translated as the defense of Socrates, right? And it is because he's defending himself by blaming it on Apollo. But we can also see that the word for defense is what's the reason? How many of you have given people apologies? And that's kind of like you're explaining the reason, for what happened, right? So in a sense, you're blaming it on Apollo. Not really, but you're giving people the reason when you're apologizing for something. I didn't mean to run the person over. They were just lying there in the street. No, sorry, that's really a terrible, don't scratch that. I don't know, I can't really scratch it from the video. Apology. So Apollo is actually a character in this dialogue because he's explaining to people that he's heard this divine source telling him, what happens. He explains, right? His friend Chaerephon, which means phon is like a phoneme or a phone. It's Chaerephon is the one who goes and hears the priestess who explains. They have a place in Delphi where people could still go. They usually go by bus now. I've been there several times thanks to Google Earth. I put my goggles on and I go to Google Earth and I can look around and I'm looking here and you can hover over and you can see the buses. Lots of buses, I think every day. It's a really big tourist thing, big museum kind of thing. But at the time, as you can see in this image here, the priestess would every day sit on a tripod over a crack where sulfuric gases were coming up from a crack in the earth where there were fumes. The Greeks thought of this as the belly button of the world where everything began. But the priestess would sit there, and as you can see the gases coming up, that would asphyxiate the priestess. But the priest would take payment, and the line of people with questions for the priestess, the oracle, would come up and they would ask their question. And Chaerephon went and asked the priestess, "Is anyone wiser than Socrates?" And the oracle said, "No." She's wacko, right? And there, of course, the priestess is famous for being hard to understand. She's asphyxiated by this gas. And by the way, there's records. Sometimes the gases were too strong and the priestesses refused to work. And the priests were upset because that meant no money for the day. But employee problems, that's the kind of thing that they had. But so Chaerephon comes back to Socrates and says, I asked the priestess, and the priestess is the mouth of Apollo, right? And they come back and they tell Socrates, I asked the priestess, asked the god, who was wiser than Socrates? Was anyone wiser than Socrates? And the priestess said, no. You must be the wisest of all. And Socrates thought, that's bullshit. Well, actually, he didn't speak English, but you get the idea, right? That's nonsense. But he was curious. Why did the gods say that? So he thought, aha, I'll go out and I'll ask the poets. That's what gets Meletus upset. I'll ask the artist. That's what gets Anytus upset. I'll ask the orators. That's what gets Lycon upset. I'll go out and I'll ask all these individuals, questions to find the wisest person that there is. And then I can come back after I've found this wise person. I'll go back to the god and I'll say, you said that I was wisest. And look at Snuffy here, He's way wiser than me. So, what gives me? I don't know what he would say. But what did he discover?
He was.
The end result seems to be it's not that he's the wisest.
It's that everybody isn't wise at all.
Nobody is.
And they got mad at him.
They got pissed at him because they're getting paid by people for being the wise person that you send your son to learn how to be wise. And it turns out that the younger people that hang around with Socrates and are getting corrupted by this discover that people that the dads are hiring at great expense to teach them stuff are actually stupid people, relatively speaking. They know stuff. Socrates says they know stuff. They know a lot of stuff, but that leads them, and this happens still today, you get a lot of scientists that do great work in their field, like E.O. Wilson was the ant guy. I really loved ants. He had problems with his eyesight because one of the ants ate his eyeball. But in any case, he did great things with ants. And then he came to the conclusion that people are just like ants. We behave just like ants. And he created a science called sociobiology, which is basically nonsense. Well, it has some interesting things, right? And you get Richard Dawkins, another scientist, biologist, comes up with the selfish gene. What? Genes are selfish? And you get other books, the altruistic gene, and so on. So you get all kinds of things. By the way, on page 198 of his book, The Selfish Gene, he comes up with the concept of the meme, which he says, we ought to think of memes as alive. And he explains what a meme is. And by the way, when Susan Blackmore, one of his grad students, writes a book called The Meme Machine. We're the meme machine, because we get infected by these memes. And we're so infected by the memes, we even give up on spreading our own genes. They're even more important to us, the memes that have been infecting our heads. Like, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum. It's a meme, right?
Technically, what is a meme?
Well, let's go to ChatGPT and say, what is a meme? And yes.
So everything is a meme?
Well, maybe. But this is ChatGPT, so it might be wrong. By the way, you're welcome to use ChatGPT in this class, even in like your research and stuff. I'm pro new tools. When the internet first came out, we bought computers, we put our kids in front of the games, like the Broderbund games. We thought they were just tremendous, all kinds of interesting things. And I even tried playing some of the shooter games, and it drove me crazy, so I stopped it. But we had all kinds of stuff because we thought everybody's worried. What are these computers going to do to your kids? Medium is the message. Wow, this is the new thing. If the kids don't grow up with this stuff, they'll be behind, right? I think that's still true today. When you're talking about raising your kids, don't quote me on this, but if you don't let the kids learn how to use phones, teach them though that they need to look up when they're walking next to a moose on campus. Those moose are pretty big, and it doesn't take much for them. And I've seen people walk right by a moose with their phone. They're only looking at the phone, and they walk right by the moose. Fortunately, the moose was on his phone and didn't notice, Just kidding, moose don't use cell phones, as far as I know. No, so, it's a life form. It doesn't have a body, but it takes up space in your brain, so it uses energy. What is life? Easy question.
What is life?
What is life?
A force.
Okay, that would be part of it, actually. Smartest person I know who answered that question for us on stage in Arts 150 years ago, Stuart Coughlin, and he explained that life is any complex system that uses energy, replicates itself, what was the third one? Shoot, I'll have to look it up. Any complex system? No, that's must be the first one. It's a complex system that uses energy and replicates itself. And so, strictly speaking, a meme, which is a complex thing, right, uses up energy by taking over part of that's Beethoven's Fate motif from the Fifth Symphony. You know it, right? Yeah. Bum 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 bum. You know that one? It's the Ride of the Valkyries with our dog, right? These are memes, I would argue, according to their description of them. And what happens is they get into your brain, infect your brain. What else are you going to call it? It's like a virus, exactly like a virus. And then you go out and you spread them. So it's like a life form. So that's cool. What is life? We might use ChatGPT still further. But we're not going to use Zaz. I keep bringing this up. I ought to show you what it is. There is a site on the web called the Perseus Project, which you take a look at it, you discover it has tons of resources. In fact, I've focused in on the Greek and Roman materials. And as you can see, this is the Apology, the beginning of the Apology. And notice it's the Greek for it. You could check, like, if you see the word autis, right? Ostis. You can, that's a study tool that's you can still be on the page, but you could switch your focus to English if you like, and you can see where this comes as in one translation of English. And by the way, all these texts from Plato are in Greek, and so of course you can see what we think might be the original Greek of a lot of them. And as we kind of touched on last class, the language is certainly going to impact the way you view the world. So the language you speak, and when we're talking about Aristotle, we'll see why we